Okay, good morning. Okay, I wanted to talk today about Tikkun Leil Shavuos. I just think that anybody who grew up, let's say Haimish, or maybe even Sephardi, and then became what we would call yeshivish, either by going to yeshiva or something like that, probably experienced this this tug between saying Tikkun or learning Shavuos night. Meaning, in the yeshivish world, you come out, don't see people who say Tikkun. Everybody sits and learns. There's Chavrusas, there's Shiurim, even like, all sorts of, people are not even Chunuk in yeshiva. In the modern Orthodox world, there's Shiurim all night. Some places women stay up to learn at night. So there's plenty of learning that happens. But if someone came from a Haimish, Chassidish background or Sephardic background, they probably would have grown up saying Tikkun. Maybe B'tzibur, maybe not B'tzibur, maybe all of it, maybe not all of it, maybe the Shlaz version, maybe a different version. There's a lot of different variables that could have happened, but they would have gone through probably this process of the schlep between Tikkun Leil Shavuos and actually learning Shavuos night. So I want to talk a little bit about first that fight over if you're supposed to do Tikkun or you're supposed to, learn Dafka learning. And also a little bit where Tikkun starts from, whatever. Now, what's interesting is this is the whole minig of staying up Shavuos night is Kayidu and Nakebracht and Shulchan Aruch or the Ramah. Not the Mechaber or the Ramah brings down this minig of staying up Shavuos night, and it's Yidua. The Brisker Rav used to say that the Brisker Rav himself was not makbid to stay up the whole night Shavuos learning, and he used to say, what do you call it? Sipritzias Mitzrayim, that it says in Shulchan Aruch, you're supposed to you have to stay up all night saying Sipritzias Mitzrayim until you fall asleep. That the Velt's not so makbid about, and staying up Shavuos night, that it doesn't say in Shulchan Aruch, that everybody's running to do. So he wasn't so makbid to stay up Shavuos night. And there was definitely others who had the same mindset. There were certain great Rebbes who said they'd rather have the Chassidim well rested. Even the Yavitz brings this down, that someone who's not going to be able to daven like I mentioned Shavuos morning should sleep. So there's many different schools of thought, but by and large the minig of staying up Shavuos night, although it's not brought down in the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah B'chlal, is a very, very, very widespread minig. Everybody has it. Sfardim, Chassidim, Misnagdim, Yeshivish, everyone has this minig of staying up Shavuos night one way or the other. So where does it come from? So we've actually talked about this in the past, this famous letter from Reb Shlomo Al-Kabitz, written to describe his evening in Izmir together with Rabbi Yosef Cairo, as the two of them stayed up all night to learn. It was Shavuos night, and we used it to discuss the chshivas and the potential of Mishnayos, because the Beis Yosef's, most of his Giluyim came through the Mishnah. So we talked about that regard, about the Mishnayos regard. But you do see over there that they were staying up all night, Shavuos night, to learn. So that's a very famous source for this minig, and that predates, even the Arizal, and the Zichar predates the Shulchan Aruch. So that's like a famous source for the minig of staying up Shavuos night by learning, and that certainly helped to popularize the minig. Everybody's familiar, I'm sure, with the Magen Avram and Simon Taf Tzadik Dalid. Says that the reason al piderach hapshat, not al derech hasoid, why we stay up Shavuos night to learn, is because that night he's based on a medrash that says shinasim arev lahem. Klal Yisrael's sleep was very sweet that night, and because the night was so sweet, the sleep was so sweet, Klal Yisrael slept in, and Hashem had to come wake them up with all sorts of alarm clocks that the medrash describes, all the noises Hashem had to make to wake them up. So Hashem had to wake them up. So because of that, Klal Yisrael stays up this night to be mechaper for it, or to make sure that we're awake when Shavuos night, when the Torah is going to be given Shavuos in the morning. Lamaisa, I think I saw the Panovich Rav once said that the Magen Avram's time can only be Kaidem Matan Torah. Someone who already understands the Geshmak of Torah couldn't have overslept the morning of Matan Torah. That's what the Panovich Rav says. He says the Magen Avram's time of oversleeping was only Gezakt Kaidem Matan Torah. But Yich Shia, the minig, for whatever the reasons is, Al Pisaid or Al Pipshat, is a super popular minig. So I want to talk about a little bit what you're supposed to do that night when you're up Shavuos by night, the different Kreiser and Klal Yisrael, and maybe some of the limudim, some of the halach discussions that happen with it. Now, it's a tumult if you're supposed to stay up and learn or say Tikkun. Now, the Welt says, I don't know where the real source of this is, but the Welt says about the Goyim, that the Goyim used to say Tikkun. The Goyim would say Tikkun, which was the Alta minig, the minig of staying up Shavuos night. Let's call it started 500 years ago. From when it started, from the beginning of the minig, it started with Tikkun. And only later, when the Olam Yeshivas came around, did it really start morphing into learning Shavuos night, like regular learning, like learning Gefes, Paiskim, But Be'atzim, the minig started with Tikkun. The Goyim's minig was to say Tikkun. Mizak, that the Goyim was saying Tikkun, and the Dubna Magid, who was there in his proximity, wasn't saying Tikkun, and the Goyim Mandim. The famous story has the Dubna Magid giving Musa to the Goyim, but in this story, the Goyim Mans the Dubna Magid, and he says, why are you not saying Tikkun? Everyone else is saying Tikkun. So the Maggid tells him, I'll tell you a mashal. Says there was a young man who was ready to join the workforce, and he goes to his shver, and he says, Shver Taira, tell me how do I go to work? What do I do? And the shver tells him, go to the market, look at all the graces seichrim, see what they do, copy them, and that's how you go to work. You copy what they're doing. So this young man goes to the market, and he looks around, and he sees that in front of every store, there's like hanging in front of the store a display of 5, 10 items that are hanging out in front of the store. Display pieces to show the ilim in the store, to show the ilim in the street, in the market, what the shopkeeper has. So this young man goes, he buys 10 display pieces, he rents himself out a little stall, and he hangs up 10 display pieces outside his store. And he calls the shver, he says, come shver, I want to show you, look how matzliach I was, I got the whole thing up and running within a day. And the shver comes and he says, Tippish, the people are hanging things in front of the store to show what they have in the store. If you don't have any stock in the store, you can't stop and put display pieces, that's not a business, what are you doing over here? So the Maggid told the guy, you know Kol Kula, and everything's Masudar for you. So when you learn Tikkun, which is just pointers, 3 psukim from here, 3 psukim from here, a mishnah from here, a mishnah from here, a little idra, a little zayar, a little thing. So in your mind, you have major stock in the warehouse, and every time you learn 3 psukim, it triggers this whole, big shear inside your head about whatever that pasuk you have in the storehouse. Me, I'm just like this young man. I have whatever the display is. So if I'm not learning, I'm not learning. I'm just reading. So for me, it doesn't work. This is what the Maggid told. Now, it happened. It didn't happen. It's a story that's brought down. There are those who are that never could have happened. Whatever. That's not for today. But in any case, this is what the Maggid was said to have said to the guy to justify learning instead of saying Tikkun. So let's just start with where the source for this minhag for saying Tikkun is B'chlal, and then we'll work our way down to the Chalkim who say not to say Tikkun and how they, what they say you should do and whatever. So the honest truth is that in the Rishonim, there's kemat no references, mamish kemat no references at all to staying up Shavuos night. Not only is it not brought down Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah, it's obviously not a Gemara, not a Medrash, not a Yerushalmi, a Bavli, Sifri, Sifra. It's not even brought down in the Rishonim. There's no Rambam about it, there's no Rif about it, there's no Rush about it. Kemat not brought down. There is a Mascaras from one of the Ramban's grandchildren. The Ramban has a grandson who mentions that the Yekirei, I forgot what his sprach that he calls them, but the tzaddikim, the mamish yechidim who know Sayyid Hashem, they stay up this night to learn or to say Tikkun or whatever it is, and he describes a little bit what they learn, and it does sound very much like a Tikkun, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, like a little smorgasbord, but he says mamish like a yechidim, and even when the Beis Yosef and the B'Shem Al-Kabitz describe their experience Shavuos night, they describe it as something that is a nascent minhag, like a brand new minhag that's just starting to spring up. So the minhag doesn't come from a Gemara L'maaseh. It comes from the Chug HaMekubalim, called the Circle of Mekubalim, who lived in the 1500s, and the Mekubalim instituted this minhag to stay up all night and learn Shavuos night. Now, where did they find the source? So this is a Zayar. The Zayar in Parshas Bereshis says as follows: Rav Shimon havayasev Eloi beiraisa b'leil dekala eschaber b'bayla. Rav Shimon was sitting with the whole chavraya, and he was learning the night that the kala is mischaber l'bayla, which means the night of Matan Torah. The Tanin and Kolin and Chavraya the Bnei Yechol, the Kala, it's Tzricha B'Ulayl, the Kala, everyone needs on this night is, and it goes on, it's an Arichas, but in the Zayar it says that Rav Shimon was sitting and learning with Talmidim, because all the Talmidim need to be sitting and learning this night, the night of Matan Torah when it happened. So you have a Zayar in Parshas Bereshis, which the Rishonim didn't know of, obviously, but a Zayar in Parshas Bereshis that seems to say that there's an inyan of staying up at night. It talks about learning a B'Chavraya, to sit and learn with the Talmidim, and to learn the Zayar, to learn with everybody on Shavuos by night. Now, the Zayar mentions this, and when it came, the Mekubalim in the 1500s, the Mekubalim adopted this minhag and made it, part of their they more or less institutionalized it. Meaning, instead of being mamish only for a few yechidei skula, they made this for everybody. Everybody was able to sit and learn Shavuos by night. Now, the Arizal is brought down, and Rav Chaim Vital brings from the Arizal as follows. He says. V'zeu inyan mailas chag Shavuos, u'lechein hazug. It's all kabbalistic. Hazug atachti neser b'leil Shavuos, v'le'oidel shetzarach adam shleilishim b'layla zeh klal. It's important that Arizal said that a person shouldn't sleep at all on this night. El tzarach v'liyas kol halayla neurim v'oiskim b'Torah k'nizker b'aruch b'akdama sefer hazayir. It's important that a person should be awake and oisik b'Torah on this night of Shavuos by night, is what the Rav Chaim Vital writes b'shem the Arizal. So because the Zayar says it, and the Arizal was masmech yadei, the Arizal said this is a minhag that's important. So this minhag caught on and became something that all people, especially in the Arizal circle, and then eventually expanding outward, caught on to and started doing to stay up Shavuos night and learn. Now, the Arizal himself starts giving a little bit more explanation as to which particular type of learning has to happen on this night. Now, rather, the Rizal says something very, very important over here. He says something, and the place can bring this down, and this is maybe what helped it become so popular. He says, Vida, shekol mishala yisham balayla hazeh klal, anybody who won't sleep on this night at all, afilu rega echad, even 1 minute, v'hei oisik b'Torah kol halayla, and will be oisik in learning all night, muftach lo sheyashlam shnasei, v'leyer lo shum nezik b'shanahi. He's muftach that he'll complete the year, he'll live out the year, and no nezik will happen to him over this year. So the Arizal says this like haftacha, that someone who sits and learns Shavuos by night the whole night and doesn't waste a minute, he's not he'll live out the year and he'll have a good year. Now because of this, there's many the many rabbis that talked about it, but the Yavitz talks about it, and Chak Yaakov talks about it, others talk about it, that it's very important not to waste time Shavuos night, which is a very hard thing to do. Shavuos night, everyone's up, we're not used to being up, and it's important not to waste time Shavuos night, because this is the night, Kilu, that Nachtam Dinah for the whole year. The Arizal writes in Torah al Kapanim, it's Kabbalah Satira, it's the Rosh Hashanah for Chedushay Torah. It's a lot of different things that a person has to be certain not to waste his night. Now, Grada Stam De'elim Shnos, I'll give you a little loophole. If it's hard not to waste time, some Rebbe said that saying Sipur Tzadikim counts as learning on Shavuos by night. A person says Maisis of Tzadikim, that also counts. So that might be easier than in Ketzad HaRegel. So if someone's struggling, a little loophole, you could say Maisis of Tzadikim, that also could work. But in any case, this is what the Arizal says. Now, because of this Arizal, this minig catches on and it becomes a very popular minig. Now, what exactly to learn? So the Arizal says some sort of seder. And if you look in the Magid Mesharim, in the Hakdamat of Magid Mesharim, where this letter from Shlomo Al-Kabitz is mentioned that we spoke about in the past, over there also it has a certain seder alim what you're supposed to say. But the one who really institutionalized it and made it mamish like kavua for everybody, what the seder is the Shlah Kaddish. The Shlah, when he came to Eretz Yisrael, he emigrated and he found various different minhagim, and he standardizes it and puts it in the Shlah, a very set seder, the first 3 psukim of every parasha, the last 3 psukim of every parasha, the first 3 psukim of every chelik of Navi, the last 3 psukim, then he does some Mishnayos, 1 Mishnah from every Masechta, Apiseder the Mishnayos, and then some of the Idra, some of the Zohar, some of the Sefer Yitzira, a whole seder that became very standardized that the Shlah Kaddish, instituted. Now, his seder is not the only seder, and there's rather some fighting about it, and maybe we'll get to that in a minute if we have some time. Now, I want to really talk about the argument about, let's call it yeshiva-like, learning or saying Tikkun. Because someone who really is not shaykh to learning, or not shaykh to learning, that amount of hours in a night, it's pretty pashut that the ikar minig that was niskabel and Klal Yisrael was to say Tikkun. That's the main minig. Before anyone was learning, really mudim, that was the minig in Klal Yisrael. And if someone, is able to get through the night that way and do it properly, then kol hakavod, of course he should do that. There's actually Rav Chaim Kanievsky. They quoted from him in one of the svarim about the Chazon Ish. Rav Chaim Kanievsky says he was once in the Chazon Ish's house, Erev Shavuos, and he saw 2 people come out back to back. And one guy comes in, and he asks the Chazon Ish, he says, Rabbi, should I learn or should I say Tikkun this year? And the Chazon Ish tells him, Gay learn. A few minutes later, someone else walks in. He says, should I learn? Should I say Tikkun? Chazon Ish looks at him. He says, you should say Tikkun. Don't start learning now. Say Tikkun. He says it was mamish strange to him. Like, well, what's like Chazon Ish flip flopping within 5 minutes? He said, and then he paid attention. He says, I was thinking about who the people came in. He says the first one who came in was a yeshiva man who grew up in the Elam yeshivas, who every year learned, and now his kids were becoming a little more chassidish, and he was having a guilty conscience. Should he maybe go to the minig of doing Tikkun? Should he stay with his minig? Chazon Ish told him, "Gay learn. You're a learner. Go sit and learn." He says the next person came in was a person fakert. He was a guy who was raised saying Tikkun his whole life and was now becoming a Chazon Ishnik, and he wanted to start learning. The Chazon Ish told him, "No, zog Tikkun. It's fine. You don't have to. This is not where you have to chap a guilty conscience." So he says, you see that the Chazon Ish's real psak was nara pashta. Whatever the minig is, whatever a person's comfortable doing, you should do. So zecher, the stakes over here, at least I would think, are not super high. If a person, is able to become, orangutan and saying his Tikkun, say his Tikkun. If he needs to learn to stay up, so learn to stay up, whatever it is. But b'chol Bachrim seemed to struggle with this. Bachrim who went to yeshivas, who grew up saying Tikkun, particularly Sephardi Bachrim, and there's a whole bunch of tshuvas from Sephardic Rabbanim. Bachrim were writing to them who were going to yeshivas, who now became exposed to the minig of learning, and they wanted to know, are they supposed to stay up and learn, or are they supposed to say Tikkun? So Rav Adia in Yechavadas has a tshuva, where he brings all the source material that says about saying Tikkun. He even brings that mashal with the Dubna Magid and the Goin to show that, he brings that. And then he says, it takes a strange twist. He says, Lamaisa, the Gemara in Avodah Zarah in the Afitas says, Ein adam leimed ela mashali b'chafetz. And as I was gepaskin in the Shulchan Aruch, the Shulchan Aruch says that a person is supposed to learn Ein adam leimed ela mashali b'chafetz. So says Rav Adia, this in his mind becomes a machlekes in the Mekubalim and the Halacha. The Mekubalim say it's super important to do Tikkun, to do only the tikkun the way it's set up. But the halacha seems to say, it's a person supposed to learn what he likes. So he says, to me, this is no different than a regular machlekes between Kabbalah and halacha. And he says, naktin in our rule, like the Re'im and the Radvaz, that if a person has, if there's a machlekes, Kabbalah and halacha, especially if it's connected in Furush Gemara, you go like the Gemara, and therefore he says, it's fine to learn Gemara. That's what Ravadi says. It's fine to learn regular limudim, even though the minig in the Sephardic world and the Chidah, I'll read from it in a minute, it's very stark like this, that the minig is to learn tikkun and to not change it at all. But Ravadi says he's comfortable changing it. Now, this is out of order. I should have read you the Chidah first. The Chidah, in his Sefer Leil David, he writes Lahedi like this. He writes as follows. He says, Minig kavua b'Reiv Yisrael, yatzu kvutzim pamalius limud ba'ava tikkun amasudar. The minig in Klal Yisrael is to go kvutzis to learn tikkun. V'yaris halayla, and they light up the night like that. V'asher hein lo kesef lasas advarim k'mishpaton, yizar likers aseda matukin me'Rabbeinu Arizal, make sure to read the proper seder from the Arizal, v'u ha'meforsim b'chol kvutzis Yisrael b'kama me'yeshanim. This is the tikkun that's meforsim in Gans Klal Yisrael for several hundred years. He says, V'yan sheshamati, I heard Kiktsas Leimdim Kavu Lumid Perik Me Rambam Me Yad Chazaka V'Yeshalam the Idr L'Ratzu Lumid Atikin Arizal. He says, I heard that some of the Leimdim, this is Dafka a Leimdim problem, and Taka the Elam Yeshivas is the one that really made inroads into this. I heard that Leimdim are not happy saying Tikkun, and they want to learn, properly Mudim on Shavuos night. So he says, "Es Kasti Nasati Asher Leitoiva Sulasis Bamal Atzman." It's not good what they're doing to make their own minig. L'shanas minig Kol Yisrael. Even though they've said, listen, we don't know last week we don't know Sisra Torah, we're just reading over here. It's not doing anything for us. We want to learn properly. And this is the minig, and this is what the Arizal says. It's a person should do like everyone else and not make a change. So the Chidah strongly encourages even Laimdim, even Yeshivalite, not to learn, but they should do Dafka Tikkun. Comes along with Ravadi in this tshuva, and he says it's a machlekes Kabbalah and halacha, and he always we say you could go like halacha, you could go like halacha over here. That's his tshuva. Now, I saw something interesting in this, like Shnei Nevi'im Nisnabu B'Sigin Echad, one from a Pinchas Karitzer, and one from a Sephardi Paisik from Tel Aviv in the 1950s, and it was interesting to me. I'll read from the tshuva because it's more mufurish, but the tshuva says as follows. He says as follows. It's a tshuva sefer called Asei L'Charav of Chaim David Halevi. He was a dayan in the Rabbanot. He wrote extensively. I don't know, most people here probably never heard of him, but he was a Talmud Chacham. And he writes as follows. He says, he brings very stark, they should say tikkun. He says, V'oid oisef l'chatam. I'll give you another tam why you should say dafka tikkun, he says. Shiroi la'adam, lilmoid gam Torah lishma mamish. It's wichtig that on Shavuos night, a person should learn Torah lishma mamish. L'kayim mitzvahs b'yri l'loi kol matara. To be Mekayim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's ratzim without any ulterior motives. V'chol limud shadam loimed, yesh bei hana seyidiyah v'ashlema shu meishiv. Masik. Any limud that a person is going to learn, he's healthy, he's in the middle of a sugya, he's learning a miktzai, he's hearing an interesting shir, he has some sort of other hana from getting the information or understanding the sugya. L'chein roi lefachis pamachas pashan, at least once a year, lilmud Torah lishma k'pshuta shel dvarim. To learn Torah lishma k'pshuta shel dvarim. So he does over here is like an interesting twist. He says it's not b'mikra that Shavuos by night we learn just pashat laning, reading and idras and zachan that we have no understanding in, and just reading words. It's on purpose. It's lahedya. That's not the bug. That's the program. The program is to learn things that we don't really understand much what we're reading, because like that, there's no zaytik kavanas and you're getting Torah lishma. This is what he says. And Pinchas Karitzer used to say in his own way, I can't say all the Yiddish, but Pinchas said, Pinchas Karitzer used to say, Vasib Shat, that during the year a person could learn hours and hours and his mouth doesn't hurt him. Shavuos by night, you sit down to learn for a few hours and his mouth is hurting him. He says the pshat is because when you learn the whole year, you have a havana in things. When you have a havana, it doesn't hurt. It goes smooth. When you don't have havana, you're just reading words, then your mouth gets tired. That's not, and he's saying the same thing in his own way, that there's some sort of like intentional purpose over here of learning Shavuos night, almost shalei b'kavana, like that's a Torah lishma. So now this is an interessant zach, because this idea itself is ba'atzam a great machlekes between some of the big rabbis, the big Polish rabbis. If learning and understanding, or learning and having some hana, is considered a pagam and Torah lishma b'chlal. Meaning the premise of this svara over here is that if a person has too much geshmak in his learning, the svara is too zis, felt in the Torah lishma. Like lishma should be dry as a bone. Lishma should be pasha. You have no hana, you don't even know what you're reading, and you're just mamish forcing your way through it. That's the understanding of this havana. Now there is a Yismach Yisrael, the Alexander Rebbe, who says as follows. He says in Parshas B'chukaisek, rather the last week's parsha, that I just came across this earlier in the week. He says as follows. He says, Ki alaymed b'tayru mevin u'makir b'pupula v'saras ha'tayru misanik. Someone who learns and he understands it and he's enjoying and he's having good svaras and he's having hana. L'zen leinikr limud ha'tayru aveda v'yigiv amal. That's not called amelus. The shetiyah amelim b'tayru that's being muskar the beginning of Parashat Bechorah. So that's not Amelus. Ki b'zeh adam neneh v'sameach lo yiyaf v'lo yigei. He's not getting tired out from learning if he enjoys what he's doing. If he's saying Gishmak Esvaris. Ve'etzel zeh ha'loim v'aleif and zeh etzloi nikra avoidi. He says v'kach pirish mashet tzivanu chazal sheti amelim b'Torah v'lo l'shem tainik v'simcha. Amelim b'Torah means like it's a pagam in the Torah almost like. This that we say sheti amelim b'Torah like a high madrig of Torah, it's a pagam to have too much enjoyment. If you enjoy it too much, that's not good. That's what the Yismach Yisrael is saying. Now it's Bakant Zach, but everybody knows the Avnei Nezer in the Hakta, the Sachachav in the Hakta to Eglei Tal, the Avnei Nezer writes the Fakert. Like I brought a paper of it. I'll read it for you. The Avnei Nezer writes. This is a famous shtickle how he works it in, but he says L'chayri is referring to the Yismach Yisrael. He says Midi Dabri. Zachar Ezker Bezesh Shamatik Tzasbnei Adam Tayin B'derech HaSeichel Binyan Limud HaTorah HaKdosha. I've heard people making a mistake from the Derech HaSeichel in regards to Torah HaKdosha. V'amru Ki Aloymin U'Machadash Chedushim V'Sameach U'Masanik B'Limudei Ein Ze Limud HaTorah Kol Kach L'Shma. I heard people saying that if you learn and you're Sameach and you're having too much enjoying in the learning, that's not really Limud HaTorah L'Shma. It's not the same level as someone who learns mamish dry just to just to get it and doesn't really know what he's doing. Like there's a Gemara of Zohar that says Leil Ligrisin I forgot the exact word. It says a person should learn even though he doesn't understand the words. It's also in the Testament Aleph. That's what the Gemara of Zohar says. It says the people think that's like the spitz learning. Learn even though you don't understand what you're doing. But learning and you're having geschmack, you're saying shikach Torah, that's not real learning. So he says fakert, it's not true. He says Adarabah kizehu ikar mitzvahs limud Torah liyas sas v'sameach misanig b'limudei v'oz divrei Torah nivloim b'damei. The ikar mahalach of limud Torah, the ikar kavan of limud Torah, is that it should be sas v'sameach, it should be freilich and happy and well understood. That's the only way that a person is really going to understand it. When a person is nene from the Torah, becomes davuk to the Torah, and he brings a zera kaddish like this. So this is, and then he's masber Rambam. So Avnei Nezer famously was chaylik on this and says that Adarabah, learning with a simcha, learning with a havana is mamish the proper way of learning. So to me, it's just interesting that some people are gufa saying the reason why we say Tikkun Leil Shavuos and not another type of learning is to bring out some sort of dryness, which mechadais that's even a maila. Now, in any case, others say, and this I think I saw this Fasema says this, that the reason why we learn Shavuos by night Tikkun Dafka is because we're supposed to. It's another like twist on this. Not to say that it's not supposed to be geschmack, but someone who's mamish like fachapt with Torah in a crazy way. Someone who's pashut, sick with his love for Torah is not kaying Gibber one piece and saying a svara and a shtickle Torah. He pashut wants to grab from everywhere. It's like a smorgasbord. You pashut can't get enough. You walk into Lahavdil, a guy walks into an all-you-can-eat buffet and he sees this, he likes this, he wants that. You're not going to take one steak and sit down with a fork and a knife and start eating it properly and digesting it and then make sure it's seasoned right. You want everything on the table. So Sama says, so Shavuos night is the same thing. Tikkun is supposed to be a person walks into a smorgasbord. He wants chumash, he wants neviim, he wants mishnayos, he wants gemara, he wants zayir, he wants sefer yitzir, he wants everything. It's like a smorgasbord. It's chap chap chap. So it's a whole different twist on why learning everything, even though you're not learning anything particularly well. But it's not to say that lishma of it is tanat of it. No, it's more you want to advise that you have like a certain geshmak. There's a story, I don't know exactly the details of it, but they say about the Goyin that the Goyin Kaidu was very selective at who he let come learn by him. The Goyin was very, very selective who was able to be in his chavraya. So someone came to learn by the Goyin, and the Goyin told him, okay, I'm going to give you Fahar in 2 hours. I'll give you Fahar soon, he said. Take this pasuk in Yeshaya. He gave him one pasuk in Yeshaya. He says, go in the side room and chaza this pasuk until you really think you know it, and then I'll give you Fahar. So the person went to the room and he understood that the Goyin was going to obviously ask him something, mamish, tif in the pasuk. So he didn't chazer it once. He chazered it 100 times, made sure he really had all the phrasing and the words, what comes before, what comes after, what exactly is supposed to come to do, which chazals, what's relevant to it. And then he comes out after 45 minutes, he knocks on the Goyin's door, he says, okay, I'm ready for the Fahar. The Goyin says, 45 minutes and you're done with this pasuk? Not for me. Why? Because the Goyin wanted to see, it wasn't a Fahar about seeing if he understood the pasuk. It was a Fahar for Chavivas HaTorah. Could you sit with one pasuk and just marinate? Could you just sit with one pasuk again and again and again, or you get bored? So there's a certain idea of like a certain Avas HaTorah that's shown from not getting bored of things that aren't stimulating per se. That's the Sfas Emes' version of Kilo what Tikkun is. Now, there's a lot of different. This is really the fight about learning it for yeshiva light or not. And by the Sfardim, I think that. Even today, by the Sfardim, I think even Yeshiva Light learn it, but by the Sfardim, there was a lot of pushback amongst the Gedolei Poskim by the Sfardim, the Kaf HaChaim and the Chida and the Siv Chaim David HaLevi. You pushed back and said that Tikkun is the way to go. Now, there's a whole nother mavucha about Tikkun. Now, I think today, anybody who says Tikkun says Mishnayos. Mishnayos is in the Tikkun also. But Apilim Mukubalim and Arizal and others, it seems that saying Mishnayos on this night is mamish not a good thing to do. And the real Kabbalah track of Tikkun, Bedafka leaves that Mishnayos. And there's a Riches Tikkuva here from Yaakov Leil I brought. I'm not going to have time to read from it, but a Riches Tikkuva to say that, saying Mishnayos and Leil Shavuos is not a good zach. And I, Vestim Efregen, that the Beis Yosef and Rishonim Al-Kavitz were clearly learning Mishnayos and then I Shavuos when they were saying Tikkun. So he answers that the Beis Yosef had a special kesher to Mishnayos. For him, Mishnayos was good on Shavuos by night. But for everybody else, Mishnayos is a problem. And there's much more. Okay, this is just a little sampling of the various different minhagim, the rationales, the svaros, to be continued. I think next week we're not going to have a shir, Erev Yom Tov, so 2 weeks.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.